I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk about the Ukraine ties once again to the Steele dossier and to the Mueller investigation. We have some more news coming out of John Solomon, who has now uncovered that one of the people that was supposedly part of this whole Russia web that was, spying on the U.S. and meddling in the elections. One of these guys, Konstantin Kilimnik, who Mueller was saying, and a lot of the media was saying was working for Russia and for Putin. Actually, it turns out that this guy now has nothing to do with Russia or with Putin. He has everything to do with, once again, Ukraine. And instead of being a Russian asset, he was actually a U.S. State Department intel source. How did Mueller get this so wrong? I wonder how he got this so wrong. I doubt it would have been intentional. Would it, Alexander?
Well, I have to disagree, Alex. I'm sure that Mr. Mueller is very well informed about who Mr. Kilimnik is and what he's been up to. Now, can I just say a few things about Kilimnik? Because Kilimnik worked with Paul Manafort. Remember him? He was the other person who was supposed to be in touch with the Russians. And we've discussed many times on these programs. And John Solomon at The Hill has explained at great length that Paul Manafort was not actually working for the Russians or actually in touch with the Russians. He was an advisor to the former Ukrainian president, Viktor Yanukovych, but he was also, that is to say, Paul Manafort was very closely tied to the US, to the US embassy, and his major job in Ukraine was to persuade President Yanukovych of Ukraine to move Ukraine away from its ties to Russia and towards the US. So Manafort was lobbying in Ukraine on behalf of the US and against Russia.
And Yanukovych was the president that got overthrown. That was the coup that went down in 2015. So that was Yanukovych.
Exactly. Yanukovych he failed. He was overthrown in the end because in the end he rebelled against Manafort's advice, and where Manafort had been pushing him to agree this association agreement with the European Union, in the end, when Yanukovych realized that it would go down very badly with Yanukovych's electoral supporters in eastern Ukraine, he pulled out of it. And at that point, the United States, the European Union, and Yanukovych's political opponents in Ukraine all came together and overthrew him in the Maidan coup. Now, that's Manafort. Now, the point about Kilimnik is that Kilimnik was a very close associate of Manafort's. Kilimnik was working a lot of the time with Manafort. So Manafort was working on behalf of the US, and it now turns out, and this should come as no surprise to anyone who's been following the story carefully, that Kilimnik was also working on behalf of the US. He was, as you correctly say, a State Department source. That's what we know. I'm sure he was many other things behind the scenes.
A U.S. spy, correct?
He was a U.S. spy. And I'm going to make a guess also. I think he was also a sort of conduit between the U.S., the State Department, and certain anti-Russian Ukrainian oligarchs. That seems to be what he was principally about. Now, Mueller has completely misrepresented what Kilimnik was. He's made Kilimnik out to be some sort of, Russian intelligence asset. There's no evidence of that. All the evidence points to Kilimnik working against the Russians. And if we go back to the sort of Russiagate mythology that we've been reading so much about in the media, one of the central stories that was conjured up to sort of prove the collusion was that Paul Manafort supposedly shared Trump campaign opinion poll data with Kilimnik, and this was supposed to be incredibly sinister, and I know could understand why, by the way, but many people cited that as proof of collusion on the basis that Kilimnik was a Russian intelligence asset. And of course, now we now know it's actually an American intelligence
So he shared polling data, public polling data, with an American spy.
Exactly. Who? I mean, Manafort would have known he was an American spy. He would.
Well, they were working together. He knew.
They were working together. Exactly. He knew.
So they probably shared a lot of stuff.
Well, they shared lots of stuff. And as I said, I think Kilimnik's job, and the reason Manafort did that, by the way, was because, as we know, Ukraine was actually backing the Clintons during the presidential election. And I think Manafort was trying to keep his own contacts in Ukraine, who would have been interested in what he was doing as the sort of Trump campaign chief. I think he was providing them with information through Kilimnik. So it all comes back to Ukraine. It all comes back to the US. But the country that's not involved, as it turns out, is Russia. Russia had nothing to do with this.
Boy, and let me read you a passage from John Solomon's article. God, the U.S. Embassy in Kiev was very, very busy sabotaging Trump. I mean, my God. So here's a passage from John Solomon's article.
Yeah.
Solomon says he, in reference to Kilimnik, he interacted with the chief political officer at the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, sometimes meeting several times a week to provide information on the Ukraine government. He relayed messages back to Ukraine leaders and delivered written reports to U.S. officials via emails that stretched on for thousands of words, the memos show. The FBI knew all of this well before the Mueller investigation concluded. Well, there you go, Alexander. This was all common knowledge.
Well, of course it was. And as I said, Mueller has completely misrepresented who Kilimnik is. And so, of course, has the FBI and the media. They've all been pretending that this man was someone other than he actually was. He was an American spy, and he was a bagman for the Ukrainian oligarchs who were working with the US and who were trying to keep Ukraine as distant from Russia as possible. It's important to stress, I said this several times on our programs, that it is a complete misconception that Ukrainian oligarchs are pro-Russian. On the contrary, the very last thing they want to see is Russian influence in Ukraine grow to the point where it will threaten their control of Ukraine and its economy. They do not want to see Vladimir Putin and the Russian government doing to them what Vladimir Putin and the Russian government have done to the oligarchs in Russia.
It says here in the article, towards the end, that Kilimnik holds a Ukrainian and Russian citizenship. He served in the Soviet military, attended a prestigious Russian language academy, and had contacts with Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. There's that name again, Oleg Deripaska. What do you make of that connection?
Well, this is one of the important things to understand about Russiagate, is that this name, Oleg Deripaska, comes up time and time again. Christopher Steele worked for him. Glenn Simpson worked for him. It turns out that so did Konstantin Kilimnik, and I suspect lots of other people were involved with him in some way or other also. Now, I want to say one thing about Deripaska. Deripaska is not a friend of Vladimir Putin's. There was a famous incident back during the 2008-2009 financial crisis, where Putin came to one of his factories, one of Deripaska's factories, where all the workers were being left unpaid, and the factory was basically grounding to a stop. And Putin berated Deripaska and publicly humiliated him. So, and this
with the pen, it went viral. And
absolutely.
I would put that video up, Alexander, but we did it last time. We did it last time with the last video. I think we actually got completely demonetized for that. But I encourage all our viewers to do a search for that video because it's all over the place where Vladimir Putin asks for his pen back to Deripaska. That's the guy that we're talking about here.
Exactly. So this is no friend of Vladimir Putin's. Now, there have been suggestions that he had some kind of input. Deripaska had some kind of input into the Trump dossier, the Steele dossier. He denies it. But I would say that not only is he not a friend of Putin, but it is becoming very interesting how his name constantly comes up. And we see that Kilimnik had connection with him. We see that Christopher Steele had connection with him. We know that Glenn Simpson had a connection with him. I wonder, and we also know that he had some kind of connection, by the way, to Bill and Hillary Clinton. And I've heard, I'm not certain about this, but I'm pretty sure it's true, that he was also a donor to the Clinton Foundation. Now, the other thing to say about Deripaska is that last year, Deripaska was massively sanctioned by the US Treasury. And I always found that very strange, why the US Treasury specifically went for him. And I can't help but wonder whether it's because he's had some kind of role in the background in Russiagate, which we haven't yet got the full sense of. But let me stress again, for our viewers, and for the purpose of understanding who Konstantin Kilimnik is, the fact that Kilimnik is a friend of Deripaska's, has Russian citizenship, and an apartment in Moscow under Deripaska's aegis does not make him a Russian intelligence asset. It, on the contrary, suggests if he's close to Deripaska that he is opposed to the Russian government.
No, I mean, Solomon makes it very clear in this article that Kilimnik was indeed a U.S. source. In other words, he was a spy. He was working with Manafort. He was in Ukraine around the time of the coup, the Maidan 2014 coup. We have this nexus that is forming of characters in this Russiagate hoax. The Clintons, Steele, Deripaska, Biden, Ukraine, Manafort, Kilimnik. It seems like this connection is where, Barr should really focus in on, is it not? Because something is, I mean,
absolutely.
It's there.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly what they were doing. Were they funneling money? Was this one big, money laundering scheme? Were they getting IMF funds and just moving it around to the Bidens, to the Clintons, all this stuff, Uranium One, all these things that have been going on with the Clinton Foundation and Ukraine and Deripaska and all these actors? There's something there, but I still don't think we've exactly figured out what this racket was. But there's no doubt about it. You're looking at US, UK, Ukraine.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. And Ukraine is, I think, an important key to this. And by the way, John Solomon needs to be commended for delving so hard in what was going on in Ukraine. And you mentioned Christopher Steele. I mean, I was reading a further article by Andrew McCarthy on National Review, and he slipped out something which I didn't know, but which certainly made my eyebrows shoot up, which is that it turns out that Christopher Steele became a paid FBI informer in February 2016. Now, that is long before we knew that he'd been commissioned by Glenn Simpson on behalf of the Hillary Clinton campaign to start researching Donald Trump, and long before he started writing the Trump dossier or compiling the Trump dossier, which is the Steele dossier, which he started to do in June 2016. But it's, of course, around the time, February 2016, when George Papadopoulos is being introduced to Joseph Mifsud, and where all these events involving Papadopoulos, George Papadopoulos, which we've discussed in other programs, and which Mark Stein has brought out so brilliantly in his interviews with Papadopoulos, were happening. Now, we know that Steele also has a connection to Ukraine, because earlier reports about Christopher Steele coming out of Britain have confirmed that Steele provided Ukraine-related information about Russia, supposedly, to the British intelligence community, going all the way back to 2014. So there is a Steele-Ukraine connection as well. And now we discover, as I said, that at the same time that the FBI and the CIA and all these people are taking an interest in George Papadopoulos, Christopher Steele, with his Ukrainian connections and his other connections, is for some mysterious reason also being appointed an FBI informer in February 2016, at about the same time as Papadopoulos is being first approached and then set up.
Alexander, can we say that maybe this whole Russiagate hoax really just has to do with money and corruption? At the end of the day, you had Ukraine, you had all these deep state actors pushing hard for Hillary Clinton to win, almost guaranteeing in their minds, they thought it was guaranteed that Clinton would be the next president. And this money train that they have in Ukraine, from what I understand, a lot of money is churning out of Ukraine. A lot of people are getting very, very rich, especially after the Maidan.
Yes.
That once Trump got there,
yeah,
they were kind of saying, crap, this guy's going to spoil the whole damn thing.
Every road in this case now seems to be leading back to Kiev. And I think really what's got to happen is we've got to start unpacking what actually was going on in Ukraine, because Ukraine seems to be at the center of this puzzle. We haven't yet fully worked out how, and we haven't yet fully worked out why and what was going on exactly, but something clearly was going on there. And I mean, the pieces are there. Somebody just has to put them together. Right. And find, what the missing pieces to this puzzle are. John Solomon is clearly onto something. And what it now needs is proper investigation by the US federal agencies. And it may be that with the change of government in Ukraine, they might find that the Ukrainians are now becoming more accessible and open to answering questions than they were, even a few weeks ago.
Yeah, because Poroshenko was lobbying extremely hard against Trump, and he was pushing for Clinton to win. I mean, he was very vocal and very public about his disdain for Trump and his affection for Clinton.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the point about Poroshenko is that, of course, Poroshenko, who was the president of Ukraine, and Ukraine were meddling in the US election. There's far more evidence of that than there is evidence that the Russians were meddling in the US election. I mean, we've got these weird indictments from Mueller. One about, the troll farm in St. Petersburg, which doesn't seem to have done much of anything, to be truthful. And one about these 12 Russian GRU officers, which is looking more and more threadbare by the day. So whereas we have all this information now coming out of Ukraine, and I think really, as I said, a proper team of investigators should be sent there. And, we need to start pulling in all these people and finding out what was actually going on, because we don't yet know, but we do have some of the pieces out there. And can I stress again, this is not like Russiagate. Russiagate was a conspiracy spun out of nothing. On this occasion, we know that things were going on in Ukraine. We know that Kilimnik, for example, was a State Department asset. We know that he was working with Manafort. We know that that Mueller misrepresented him in his report And we know that the FBI was aware of the fact that Kilimnik was a US asset and not a Russian one, even before the whole Russiagate investigation got going.
God, no wonder Mueller came down so hard on Manafort. Manafort knows a lot. And Mueller came down on him so hard because of all of this. Do you think Barr's going to follow this line?
Yeah, well, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I think Barr's investigation is still, I think, at its fairly early stages. I think what Barr is waiting for is the report from the Inspector General, Mr. Horowitz, the FBI's Inspector General. And I think we're getting a lot of information now dribbling out that he's going to say some very, very critical things about Christopher Steele specifically, and perhaps other things, and perhaps recommend investigations and further and possible charges, and it may be that will lead on to all sorts of other trails that Barr will want to follow up. By the way, it's quite clear that Barr is not going to appoint special counsel, that he's going to investigate these things himself, and that the reason he's not appointing special counsel is so that he can keep direct control of the investigation of people like John Durham, who is going to be actually the investigator on the ground. So Barr is actually going to run a very tight ship, or so it seems.
He doesn't trust anyone. That's why.
He doesn't trust anyone, exactly.
The deep state is very well entrenched.
Exactly.
In the U.S. government bureaucracy. Exactly. He doesn't trust anyone.
Exactly. But I want to stress again, the thing about any legal system, which is not utterly corrupted, as some legal systems become. And the US legal system is not utterly corrupted. I've had enough interactions with it in my time to know that there are lots of decent and honourable people working inside it, and indeed in the federal bureaucracy too, is that you will always find people of integrity who believe in the law and in the Constitution, and who will work hard to uphold them. The only problem is finding those people. And it's beginning to look increasingly as if with Bill Barr, we have that person.
Well, we definitely have it in John Solomon, and his reporting is just top notch. And he's definitely onto something here.
Absolutely.
He's connecting a lot of dots.
Absolutely. We have, there are a lot of people who do commentary on Russiagate and the Russiagate related matters. But the two great reporters, the people who are doing the investigative footwork, are John Solomon at the Hill and Sarah Carter. And the fact that the two work closely together is interesting and important also.
Yeah. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because they are unsubscribing people. So just give a quick double check to make sure that you are still subscribed to the Duran, because YouTube is playing a lot of games with us, Alexander. But one thing that is not a game is our Duran Shop merchandise. And we have magic mugs. And we also have, I would say those are magic shirts too, and magic embroidered polos.
Absolutely.
Because when I wear my Duran shirt, I think my IQ goes up a good 10-20 points.
Absolutely. I mean, Alex, can I just say, one of the reasons, as I said, why we're able to explain things so clearly and so confidently, and can I just tell our viewers, repeat to our viewers, we do not rehearse our programs. Everything is completely unscripted that we say. We just have our discussions and conversations completely freely as you see them.
Every now and then we do edit, very rarely, but if like a phone rings or if like Michigan jumps on your table or something, yeah, sometimes we edit that a little, but for the most part, this is a pretty continuous conversation, a stream.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyway, the reason why we do, partly we have this enormous confidence is because, as anybody will tell you, if you're well dressed, that gives you huge confidence. And here I am in this wonderful 100% cotton, beautiful polo shirt, incredibly comfortable, perfect for hot days and cool days of the sort that we're having at the moment in London. Beautiful embroidery here. It shows you just over my heart. You can see this double-headed eagle with the two heads pointing in the two directions, one towards the east, one towards the west, because we cover both points of the compass. We seek to cover all the geopolitical news wherever it's happening. And it's a wonderful shirt to wear outdoors, and it's a wonderful shirt to wear when we're working, as we work very hard, reading and informing ourselves of what happens, and it gives us huge confidence when we go on our programs and we speak. So this is a shirt to wear. You'll feel comfortable, you'll feel stylish, and you'll feel confident, and you'll feel even more confident if you drink from these magic mugs.
The magic mugs.
Magic mugs, which I drink tea from. Well, this is the one I drink tea from because this is specifically our Duran logo that you see there, with, as I said, the double-headed eagle that I talked about. But you can see what a beautiful and handsome mug this is. It's a magic mug because, as I said, it gives me all this information. It gives me all this confidence when I drink from it. I drink tea and I sit over my computer and I'm able to drink from it and learn lots of things, and it keeps the mind and the grey cells of the brain working functionally and effectively as I spent hours reading and communicating with Alex as we track down stories. And this is the mug that my wife drinks from. And my wife, by the way, is a very high-powered academic in Britain, expert on many things. But also sometimes I drink from it too. And it's the logo, the coat of arms of Moscow. And there you have the St. George, who is the patron saint of England and of Moscow and of other places. I think of Greece too, Alex.
Well, he's a revered saint, that's for sure, absolutely. But we should do a mug for England with St. George. That would be a nice mug.
It would be
for
great
all our
mug.
UK
for all
viewers, yeah.
Because of course there he is. He's the warrior for the truth, and he's slaying the dragon of untruth, the dragon of fake news and falsehood, which is exactly what we aim to do at the Duran.
And I'm going to make a note of it to actually put together a St. George
Indeed.
mug.
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And Alexander, our users can also support us on Patreon, PayPal, and Subscribestar as well. So you can donate to us there. The links are in the description box down below. And we have an ebook on Brexit, Alexander, but we were talking before the program, and we're going to also be putting together an ebook on this very subject that we talked about, on the Steele dossier, the Russiagate hoax, the Mueller investigation. So we're going to put together some videos. We're going to transcribe those, put them in an ebook. And Alexander, you're going to put together a forward on that as well. So that'll be coming out in about, say, a week or two. Do you want to say a couple of words about how this ebook might shape up to be?
Well, I think it'll give you it'll put everything together and make it faster and more accessible, because the point about Russiagate is that, like Brexit, which is the subject of our other ebook, this is a very complicated story superficially, but it's actually, when you unpack it and analyze it, a very simple one. It's a conspiracy. Russiagate was a conspiracy to overturn an election, which the election of Donald Trump, and previously a conspiracy to make Hillary Clinton president of the United States. Brexit is a political crisis caused by the British political establishment's sabotage of the result of a democratic vote in a referendum. Now, these are the simple things you need to understand. If you understand these simple points, all the complexities, all the subterfuges, the vast gallery of characters, the political maneuvers in Westminster, the political maneuvers in Ukraine that we've just been talking about, all of these fall into place very easily. And that's the key to analyzing stories like this and to understanding what's going on. And the purpose of my foreword in the Brexit book was to explain the simplicity of this and to show why the Brexit Party's rise is so predictable given what the political class in Britain has been doing. And we traced that back in 2016. And my foreword to the Russiagate book will be the same, to explain what has happened with Russiagate, the investigation that Barr is now cranking up to, the likely charges that are going to be brought are also predictable, given the real conspiracy that was going on, which we identified in the Duran at a very early stage, and that will make everything fall into place.
Yep, well said, Alexander. And guys, don't forget, you can also get an audio copy of this video. Follow us on iTunes and SoundCloud as well. So remember that you can get this in audio format. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Till next time, everybody, take care.